We did a little review of some of the AFC West or AFC contenders and kind of looked at them and what they've done this offseason. Let's deal with the AFC West now. Let's talk about it.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory, presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our wonderful partners in Possible. Happy Memorial Day to all of you. Thank you for spending some time with us today. We appreciate you. I appreciate these two gentlemen, Matthew Lane, Craig Stout. Matthew, how was your weekend?
You know, it's been pretty good. I've had a good time so far. Nice little holiday weekend. Unfortunately, you know, the Timberwolves aren't putting up a great series against the Dallas Mavericks, but that's okay. Luka's clearly the best player on the planet right now, and, that's fine. That's okay. That was clearly a Team 1B for me. So, it's been a solid weekend. We got Dallas heading in the Celtics. Oh, we're not here to talk basketball? You look very unimpressed, Kent.
He's also muted.
Someone unmuted me. Someone muted me as I was unmuting myself. Someone just overriding there, but okay. It's the Maddie curse. Any team Maddie just tags on, they wind up losing into the conference final. So there we are again.
Yeah, the basketball's been fun. That series has been amazing. Let's talk a little football. We got the three of us on here. We got the AFC West.
There were Chiefs at the game last night.
There were Chiefs at the game last night. Hey,
there was much against what the broadcast would make you think.
There were players there. Yeah, Rashee Rice sitting off to the side, apparently not with Hollywood, Patrick, and Travis. I'm not reading anything into that. Just it was a little bit interesting there. I do want to congratulate the Kansas City Chiefs for going a week without making headlines. Great work, everybody. We did it. It only took till the end of May to make that happen, but they did it. Well done, everybody.
Yes. Congratulations, and hopefully there's no big story for the foreseeable future. Anyway, so we're going to look at the AFC West today. We're going to talk about the roster, how they look, talk a little bit about what they've done this offseason, just a quick glance at what the rest of the AFC West has done, kind of what we did with a lot of the contenders in the AFC recently. Let's start with the Denver Broncos, a team that is definitely in transition as Sean Payton continues to scapegoat the existence of that roster to try to continue to lengthen his clock there in Denver. Maddie, what you think about what the Denver Broncos look like and what they've done?
Well, I think to really get into this, we should all go get our backpacks and empty them out and see what's inside. And that way we can determine how much we live football, right?
Right here. I came prepared. You ready?
Oh, there's
you did it.
Stuff in there.
Did you have that ready for a bit?
No, not for a bit. It just happens to live right there.
Okay.
Greg and I are just in lockstep, even when we don't have the plan stuff, okay? It's all right. The Broncos are doing the Broncos thing. Sean Payton has a lot of safety net built into his job title right now. He controls everything about that team. They owe him a lot of money, and they traded stuff for him. So he's at zero real risk. So it is up to him. It is up to him to try to figure out where this team wants to go. He's got this year probably into next offseason, no matter what happens this year, to get his vision out of this team. And I think that's what you're getting. Do I think it looks good on paper? No, it looks terrible. And I think nothing that they have done since he's taken over makes me think they're figuring it out. But he also, I think, has a grace period. He has some time to make it be okay. So they're going to keep going down this road. I don't know what this road takes them. If Bo Nix isn't what Sean Payton thinks, if Bo Nix isn't the next Patrick Mahomes, as he kind of tried to allude to as being a Patrick Mahomes-esque player in his eyes, then I don't know where this team wins. I don't know where this team's strength lies. I think by next year, they're going to lose the one star on the defense that they have in Patrick Surtain. I don't think he's going to want to stay there if they keep going down this route. I don't know what this team has going on right now, Greg.
Yeah, I've got no idea either, and I'm a lot closer to them than most of us. It's been weird to watch the quote-unquote rebuild this year. Yes, they had to move on from Russell Wilson. That situation was untenable for either Russell Wilson, Sean Payton, you pick. Either way, it was untenable. So they had to move on. They had to eat some dead money. They let go one of the guys that was holding the locker room together, and Justin Simmons, just decided, okay, you're going to be out there in the ether as well. And then they went out and they signed a grand total of not a whole lot of needle movers. I think maybe Josh Reynolds 3 weeks into free agency might be my favorite move that they made. Matt Pert, that was a priority signing for them. So, there's not a ton of guys that I'm in love with that they have added to this roster at this point. And then you go into the draft, got a first round pick, and you don't have a second. So, ideally we all sit here and it's like, oh, hey, Bo Nix was taken too early. I'm not going to clown them too much for that. They needed a quarterback. They had to have a quarterback. They weren't going to go into the season with the guys that they had on the roster. I am perfectly fine with them taking Nix, and by all accounts, the Raiders were right behind them and also wanted Nix as well. So it's not like they were going to be able to trade down. It's not like they were going to be able to make an impact and get the quarterback they wanted. So, yeah, you had to go up a little higher than you expected to. But unfortunately, like Maddie said, that puts all of the eggs in the Bo Nix basket. Now you're turning to Sean Payton and you're saying, okay, if you're some sort of magic quarterback whisperer, we get why Russ didn't work out. We understand maybe Russ was uncoachable. Maybe it was not a situation where you were going to be able to transform or evolve him. Now you don't get to miss on this one. If you're Sean Payton, you have to get this right. If Bo Nix doesn't evolve beyond a league average quarterback, Sean Payton's on his way out. I could tell you right now, the leash is short out here. They want to win. Walmart has come in and bought this team, this Denver Broncos team, and they need results. They can't have another situation where they got the quarterback wrong after shelling all that money out for this offensive genius that is going to be this guy to transform the team. Bo Nix, unfortunately for this team, has to hit. All the eggs are in that basket.
And honestly, I think in the modern NFL, Sean Payton really doesn't have a lot of excuses. There's a lot of leverage he has. I think he caught one of the last teams willing to do stupid things to acquire a coach that hasn't won anything without Drew Brees, and paid him a lot of money and traded draft capital and did all that. And Sean Payton can make a few excuses, and he can blame the past on Russell. Look at this Russell Wilson contract that you put me in. It's like you didn't sign up for that. But I think when you look at Jonathan Gannon and the Arizona Cardinals being feisty last year, there are shorter leashes for finding success early, and I think you will know sooner rather than later if the Denver Broncos are going to be for real or not. As far as what they've done in the draft, I actually kind of like some of the things that they did in the draft. I'm not a huge Bo Nix hater, honestly. I thought, what? He's a better swing at the quarterback position than a Kenny Pickett is. So if you are desperate for a quarterback and you need to take a swing on that, take a swing on that. But I like what they did outside of that. Jonah Ellis, the edge rusher out of Utah, he might be more of a situational pass rusher, but I really liked him. Chris Abrams-Drain, the cornerback out of Missouri. Troy Franklin in round 4. I think we were all kind of wondering why he waited till round 4. So I think they did some good things in the draft. It'll be interesting to see how much they get out of that group, because they probably need more now. They need it now. I think they just need more now out of that group.
So here's my question. Craig, you're in Denver. Which Broncos jerseys do you see from this current team walking around that city? If somebody's going to buy a jersey from a player on this team and say, this is who I'm hitching my fandom to for the next 5 years, who are you picking?
I have seen a Javonte Williams jersey. I have at least seen that, and I get it. There's a little bit of excitement around there. Pat Surtain, I have seen those jerseys, but as Ken alluded to, I'm not sure if he's going to be re-signing with this team, if he's going to stick around there. There's not a whole lot of other guys. There are fans of Baron Browning. There are fans of Zach Allen. There are fans of Cortland Sutton, but it's not like I know. Listen, I'm just saying what I see, but it's not like There are not sexy positions that people want to go out and get their jersey for. I mean, that's just not the case for this team right now.
They just don't have stars. They don't have stars. And Kent is a little bit bigger fan of like a Bo Nix than I think I am, but I have a really hard time seeing Bo Nix being a quarterback that's going to lead your team and elevate them above and beyond. So like you got to surround him with stars, and like they don't have draft picks. They don't have they don't have anything to surround him with stars, nor do they have the stars around us. Like, I don't know. It's a very odd team to look at. And like, I know they still have Sean Payton, who gets again, I think at least one more offseason to set it up how he wants before he really has to feel some of that pressure. But man, they're not working with a whole lot. And it's not like his last offseason went well. Like Zach Allen was a fine addition over this past year, but like outside that, I wouldn't say anybody else they brought in did like that much for. Like there's nothing to get super excited about. They lost one of their longtime best players in Justin Simmons, who's now still a free agent somehow, which is weird. Patrick Surtain has been rumored on and off the trading block. Like I don't know what they're going for here. Jerry Jeudy's now gone. Like what?
I know it's like, again, we talked about, the Buffalo Bills this offseason, realizing we got to rip the Band-Aid off. We can't just keep kicking the can down the road. If we really want to compete, we got to hit the reset button a little bit. It's like the Broncos did that this offseason, except they put themselves in this position like last year, 2 years ago. Like this is not something that they went, oh, we got to shove all the chips in to compete in the AFC. It was, we need to field a functional team, and they threw all the money to try and create a functional team and didn't create one. Like it's worse than being in a situation of trying to contend, kicking the can down the road. Now all of a sudden you got no money, you got no draft picks because you were still paying for Russell Wilson, both on, off the field, however assets you want to classify them. And now you don't have anything for really anybody to get excited about. A lot of people that I talk to that are Broncos fans around here, the general vibe is, I want to wait and see on Bo Nix. And that's
sure,
the right vibe to have. And they should. They absolutely should. But there's not the palpable excitement. It's not like the Chiefs coming off of Alex Smith, drafting Patrick Mahomes, having hype, having excitement for this player, this young player. They're not to that level of excited about a brand new first-round quarterback. It's more of I want to wait because I don't want to place these expectations on this kid. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I don't even want to get hope for this team right now. That's how bad it is. Those owners are not going to let that happen for very much longer.
Nothing's made sense in Denver the last couple of years. I mean, they paid Mike McGlinchey $1 billion 2 years ago. Like, I guess technically 2 off seasons ago now. What are we doing? Los Angeles Chargers. Let's look at this group. So, big transition here with Jim Harbaugh coming from the college football ranks back into the NFL. Trying to build a team, I think, in the identity of Jim Harbaugh. Like they want to turn around and let one of the better young quarterbacks in football hand the ball off a lot. So there's that. But no, I don't know. I like where this roster stands, I think, a little bit more than I thought I would. Still some questions for sure at the wide receiver spot, but I think they've done a really good job kind of building that team in Jim Harbaugh's image over the course of one offseason. Things have kind of started to take shape, I think, for what you like out of a Jim Harbaugh team. So they do have that going for them. They're at least on track, I think.
Yeah, I think that there's clearly still holes in this Chargers roster. Like it's certainly not complete. Sure. It's certainly not finished or anything like that. And I don't think you can look at this and expect this team to win a lot or like really compete for the AFC West this year. But I just kind of ripped into the Broncos for not having a direction, not having much of an identity. It took Jim Harbaugh one off season, and this team clearly has an identity and clearly has a trajectory of where they are going. And like all their additions make a ton of sense if you look at his past NFL teams, if you look at what Michigan has been over these last few years. Like it's very clear they have a vision and they're already getting going with it. And then I think you're obviously going to get a large step up in the coaching that this team had from last year, and it returned a fair amount of those players. You're no longer going to have, this fraudulent head coach doing like Pilates core exercises on the sideline before the game starts. Instead, you're going to have their head coach just draining milk by the gallon, talking about chickens. Like, that's what's going to happen. And like, this team's going to be a lot better for it. So, I don't know. I think we've gone about a decade now of the Chargers being picked to win the AFC West year after year. And I don't think they are going to win the AFC West this year, and maybe not next year, but I think they are getting a lot closer to actually being competitive if, there's a big if, obviously, if Harbaugh hits in free agency, if he hits on his draft picks like we kind of expect, because like they're adding guys left and right. I just think the direction of this team is now very clear. I don't think you can say that about the other two teams in the AFC West that we're going to talk about today, and I don't think you could have really said that a ton about what the Staley-led Chargers were the past few seasons either.
Absolutely not. The Staley-led Chargers were, man, we really hope that Derwin James and Joey Bosa take over games for us because we're going to try and shoot ourselves in the foot at the end of all of these. That was their mantra. And yeah, to Matty's point, Jim Harbaugh came in and said, we're cutting all of this stuff that doesn't make sense, that doesn't fit into my line of thinking, and it looks good. Like this is a quote-unquote less talented roster than the previous 4 years. Let's call them 4 years of the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, we knew paper champion, offseason winner, all that stuff. We clowned on it all the time, and guess what? It came true every time. I look at this roster and I say, oh, wow, Trey Pipkins is probably not going to be playing a ton for them. That's really good for them because the Chargers the past couple of years have not gone in with that plan. They have been like, oh, we'll make it work with some of these guys. No, they address the trenches a little bit more. They're going to be able to lean on the run game, which is what Harbaugh wants to do. And in order to lean on the run game, you can't have a small back in Austin Eckler that's going to be a check down guy or something like that as your primary back. You need some guys that really makes sense. Josh Kelly was that guy. It was kind of the between the tackles guy, but that's not a great player there. Enter J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. J.K. is probably going to get hurt, but Gus, between the tackles, makes so much sense. All of these additions that they've come in this year and they've made, I see the how. I see the why. And I see how, hey, maybe if this guy plays a little bit above what we've seen in the NFL so far, call it a Christian Fulton, yeah, maybe you can get something out of a guy like that. A guy that's a steal, and Cornelius Johnson, I think, factors into this offense a lot more than a 7th-round draft pick should for them. I really like a lot of what they've built. I still think they're another year away before I'm starting to say, ooh, this is actually a contender for the Chiefs' crown. But year one, right now, looks pretty good at this point, at least from a logical team-building standpoint for Harbaugh.
I think they did some things on the defensive side of the ball, too, that kind of stick in line with that. Junior Colston's one of the best linebackers in this entire draft. Justin Igboigi is just a physical, like that is a Jim Harbaugh.
Yes, absolutely.
Defensive lineman. Like just physical, punch in the mouth, not overly dynamic, but will do his job. Like, I like that. Cam Hart's a fun ad. Like, they made some good ads. I like, we'll see. I mean, we'll see if the Jim Harbaugh identity ultimately can unseat the Chiefs in any tangible way in the future, but, like, it'll at least be interesting. Let's move on to the Las Vegas Raiders. Boy, howdy. What's you think, Maddie?
Oh, I thought you were about to go in on the Raiders. I was confused.
He wanted to, and he restrained himself.
Yep.
I mean, like, while I want to also go in on the Raiders here, they played the Chiefs well. They gave the Chiefs a lot of trouble last year, and, like, something was clearly clicking for them. But, boy, I don't see where it's at on this team. They're like, I guess they're the middle ground, like going forward of the Broncos and the Chargers. Like, I don't think there's this super clear, the pathway of how they want to build the team is clear. They're clearly building it to model after Antonio Pierce, their head coach, who takes over as, no longer the interim head coach, but their actual head coach. But the problem is they don't have a quarterback. I don't think that their additions or where they are in their trajectory in terms of winning now versus in the future are aligning with some of the moves they're making. They're getting a lot of veterans. They're spending all this crazy amounts of money on probably not the areas you need to be spending money right now, like they're trying to compete right now. But then yet they're going out there and getting Gardner Minshew to be their starting quarterback because he played well against them last year, or he's going to compete with Aiden O'Connell, who, hey, they won the game, but he didn't complete a pass for like 3 quarters in the football game. Like, I don't understand their plan. I think their offensive line has some holes in it. They have holes in this team that are going to stop them from being able to compete this year, but they're spending money and adding veterans, older veterans, like they are on the cusp of actually being a competitor. So I don't fully know where this team's going to be, but I will say this at the very end. This is going to be one of the single most annoying teams for any good offense to play, because that defense is going to be good. There's holes in that defense, but it's good. It's really good on the defensive line. They have enough good players in the back end that they are just going to be an incredibly annoying team to have to play twice in a season, despite the fact that they have like a 0% chance of winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's wild to look at this, and just like we were talking about with Harbaugh, like I looked down there and I was like, oh yeah, that's Antonio Pierce, and there's another Antonio Pierce, and there's I get it, and they were tough last year. Now, part of the reason why they were tough, in an interim coach, you change a whole bunch of stuff up in the mid-season, you don't have a ton of tape on teams like that, but they played competitively. It was a tri-level that we saw that was a lot different from any other team that we saw. I just don't see how you can convince the rest of the locker room. The rest of the locker room is going to love Gardner Minshew. They just are. Because every locker room does. That he's that guy for every locker room. I don't know how you can convince a Devontae Adams, oh, hey, this was the best we could do this offseason. This is the best thing for this franchise because we believe that he's going to take us the rest of the way. Now, the draft picks that they made, really good. I like Brock Bowers. I see how he fits in this offense. He's going to be a fun weapon for them. With Michael Mayer as well, hey, that 12 personnel, that's a little salty, especially, since, you got an offensive line that can also pave the way a little bit better, especially adding Jackson Powers-Johnson in the second round. I love those 2 picks. And then I love DeCamerion Richardson in round 4. The Raiders right now might be one of the few teams, I can't believe that I'm saying this, might be one of the few teams that can field 3 guys that can run with the Chiefs wide receivers in Nate Hobbs, Ja'Cory Bennett, and DeCamerion Richardson, all tier 1 CBAT players. Like they have 3 corners they can put out on the field and say, it doesn't matter if you want to try and go vertical on us. We're going to be able to try and run stride for stride. Xavier Worthy is faster than them, but try and run stride for stride with those guys. We're not going to be as worried about it. That's going to allow Trayvon Moore to play a little bit more downhill. Marcus Epps to play a little bit more downhill. They don't have to trigger and top everything as well. So I see the way that this works. I just can't get past the fact that you don't have a run game that you can really lean on for Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. And then you don't really have really good offensive weapons outside of the tight end position. Yes, Devontae Adams is there, but Jacoby Myers was okay last year, but another year older. They add Michael Gallup, just kind of an outside the numbers guy. That really makes sense for Gardner. And, Trey Tucker is going to be their slot guy, and I don't love that either. So there's just a whole lot of things that don't really line up and fit on the offensive side. But man, that defense could be really, really feisty and annoying all season long.
If they had a better quarterback, I'd feel okay. I'd feel okay about their, chances of competing. It's just because, I think their offensive line's okay. Colton Miller's all right. Jackson Powers-Johnson there. Jackson Powers-Johnson is a very Antonio Pierce pick. Yes, that felt very Antonio Pierce. There's some more roster construction questions I have, like going tight end in the top 40 back-to-back seasons. I mean, I get it because it's Brock Bowers, and that could be it could be a dynamic game-changing piece. But it's just kind of if it doesn't work out, then Yeah, you've kind of set your team back a little bit there. But I think the one thing when we're talking about, like, we'll kind of close this out. When you talked about the Broncos earlier, and you said, "Hey, whose jersey are you wearing out there?" There's plenty of jerseys to wear on this team. There are plenty of blue chip players. You Max Crosby and a Christian Wilkins. You've got Devontae Adams, right? And of course Gardner Minshew. No. But they've got some names. They got some players. They got a few blue chips on that roster. All right, we're gonna take a break, and we're gonna break down interior offensive linemen and linebackers as it relates to pasta right after this.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
I've gotten into golf over the last 5 years or so, and it's been a fun progression for me to get better and start needing better clubs. And I've had a lot of people tell me that nobody makes clubs like they do at PXG, period. And you know what? My experience with PXG, especially the Overland Park location, has been absolutely wonderful. And recently I had a chance to go get fitted for a PXG Black Ops driver, got a chance to swing one of those, and it was an absolute game changer. You no longer have to sacrifice distance for forgiveness when you're using your driver. And I've been fitted, a couple times, and getting to see them go through my swing and see, I've started to elevate the ball a little bit. Ball's getting a little bit high. So they said, hey, look, let's lower the loft a little bit. Let's try that out a little bit for you. Adjusted the shaft lengths a little bit and kind of found something that allows me to have the same kind of distance that I was having, and actually better swing speed than I was having, but able to control the ball a little bit more better too. I had an incredible experience at the PXG over at Overland Park. The passion that the people have there and the friendliness that they have, it's just a great experience. You got to give yourself a chance to just go check them out and go hang out with them for just a little bit. They're warm, they're inviting, they're helpful, and it's always just a lot of fun when you go and get fit at PXG. They made me a believer, and they'll do the same for every golfer in Kansas City. Visit pxg.com/KC Laboratory to schedule your fitting at PXG Kansas City. It's over on 119th Street in Overland Park. Get fitted for any club, and you'll get a dozen golf balls free. That's pxg.com/KC Laboratory to schedule your fitting. Again, pxg.com/KC Laboratory. Limit 1 dozen golf balls per location. The promotion ends June 30th. Other terms and conditions may apply. See store for details. Thanks, everybody, hanging out with us tonight. We appreciate your support of KC Sports Network, even when it's a little bit of a different schedule, with holidays and all that stuff. So we do appreciate that. We are going to break down the interior offensive linemen and the linebackers as it relates to the Matty Lane food scale. Matthew.
We pinned this fully on him now.
It is. No, it's just him.
What? This isn't a collaborative effort?
No, you literally said, the food scale?
Sure Kent and Maddie created this themselves.
And Craig gave it the okay.
Craig's trying. I gave a thumbs up at the end. These two really worked.
Yeah.
I didn't provide it.
Give me all the credit. It's okay. So the food scale, we did the burger scale last year. This year we decided to move on to something better. Kent had enough of the burger scale. He said, I want more foods. I want new foods. So we decided on
a thing that Kent says all the time when we're in his presence. I want new foods.
New foods. So now we went to the Italian food scale, and we're keeping it local to Kansas City. We don't have Andy Reid chiming in on this. I need someone to get on top of this. I need someone to say, hey, Andy, what's your favorite Italian food spot? But until we hear from him, the de facto best one, the elite tier, is Garozzo's. The position group is elite. They get a Garozzo's. If they're very, very good, great even, they get a Cascones. If, they're passable, they can get the job done, but you'd really like them to be better. It's a solid outing at the Olive Garden, the local Olive Garden. And then finally, I don't think it needs a lot of explaining. If the group is just not good, at all, Fazoli's. So let's rip into this, Kent.
All right, we'll start with the interior offensive line. Matthew, why don't you kick us off with that on the interior offensive line?
All right, let's see. Interior offensive line. We got Joe Thuney, kind of good. Creed Humphrey, kind of good. Trey Smith, pretty good. So I think we're going to have to go and give this one a pretty solid Garozzo's right off the top. I do think losing a Nick Allegretti probably lowers the floor of this unit a little bit if there's one injury, as we saw the way Joe Thuney last year. You don't have a guy that has starting game time experience ready to step in and play any one of those three interior positions. However, I am a Mike Caliendo fan. I like him as one of these reserve interior offensive linemen. I also like Hunter Norzad, who they drafted out of Penn State. So I think they still have quality depth. It's just not as proven as Nick Allegretti was. I honestly think both of those guys fit the Chiefs' offensive line better than Allegretti, who was a little bit of a limited mover. Those two guys can be more athletic. I think that if you have to plug them in, you can do a few more things out in space that the Chiefs like to do. So it doesn't feel like there's a lot to say about the interior offensive line group simply because it's been the same unit for the past couple of years, right? Like it's been the same guys. We know they're good. They're tried. They're tested. There's been some ups and downs over the past, 2 years. We can talk about Creed Humphrey snaps. We could talk about Thuney's age, getting up there a little bit, and coming off a torn pec. And we could talk about Trey Smith, probably should be in a more run-heavy scheme. He seems to really come alive when he's allowed to bully defensive linemen in the run game and not just pass it all game. Like, there's definitely some potential pitfalls there, but we've just had enough snaps now, a big enough sample size to say, even if those things are up and down, it's still a really good unit. So, shrug.
Even if it's on the lower side with those three, it's probably still a top 4 or 5 unit in the entire NFL, if not top 3. And then I love that they took the 2 stabs on athletes, good movers in Hunter Norzad and CJ Hansen. I like that CJ Hansen, from a Trey Smith perspective, from a direct, we're going to line you up, we're going to predicate our run game on you as a pulling blocker. Yeah, they've got a guy that can come in and do that. Mike Caliendo can as well, but, kind of leaning into the whole Joe Thuney thing with him at left tackle. Hunter Norzad has played all 3 positions. The starters are elite. We know the starters are elite. I just really love what they did on the backups there, taking a stab at some young guys, keeping them in-house for a little while, figuring out, hey, what do we have in Mike Caliendo? If he has to start the year because Joe Thuney is still nursing an injury for whatever reason, we're going to get to see Mike Caliendo. We're going to get to find out, okay, what's life after Joe Thuney look like? You may see some Hunter Norzad or CJ Hansen playing some right guard this year. Going to find out what's life after Trey Smith look like. That's key for this organization because they made the hard pivot a little while ago and said, we're going to get elite tackles and then we're going to just kind of cheap out a little bit on the interior, just kind of get some guys that kind of rotate in and out, are functional players there, but did not put a precedence on that. Then they went out and they got these 3 guys, again, all in one offseason, Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith, and they pivoted so quickly to, we need to make sure this stays good. This is what Patrick wants, the pocket that he wants built. So I love that they took a stab on 2 guys for next year. Go and find that out. It's an easy Garozzo's for me. Like, it really is. They had the chance to be the top interior offensive line in the league simply by just playing at the level that we've seen them play at this year. So in that regard, you can't argue with the best of the best.
Did you know that there used to be a Garozzo's in Olathe? And then they moved on. They relocated. I am going to enjoy this Garozzo's while I have it, because I don't know if this will be a Garozzo's this time next year.
Yeah.
I think there's, you've got 2 guys on contract years, and I heard it really well articulated this offseason. I'd love to give credit if I can remember who said it, but this wasn't an original thought. But someone basically said, you see the market for the interior offensive lineman go crazy because that's one of the few positions that, blue chip or top tier players wind up hitting the market, right? So that can kind of, that can make the interior offensive line market one a tricky one to navigate, where maybe there's a team that has money to throw around and just wants to try to stack blue chip players. They're willing to spend a little bit extra money, Carolina, on an interior offensive lineman. So I don't know if they're going to be able to keep the band together here. And there's going to be some change, and I don't know if it will continue to be a strength. There's question marks about Joe Thuney. You've got contract years for Creed and Trey. Maybe one of them sticks around. I'm mostly just fascinated to see what Hunter Norzad, CJ Hansen, Mike Caliendo can bring. Like, I'm very fascinated because this is a huge offense for offseason for them. Imagine, because if the same thing happens this time next year that happened to the Chiefs of 2024 that allowed them to repeat, they needed Nick Allegretti to step in there and play, not only play, but play with injury, right? So with a torn UCL, I believe it was, right? So like this depth is going to be tested. It needs to get tested. And they need to find out what they have so they know what they have going into next season too. So it's still a Grozos for sure for me, but there's a lot of question marks for the future of this position, and it's something that they're going to have to be very good about figuring out. And I love the fact that they were so intentional in investing on the interior offensive line this year.
Yeah, I think that was important when you lose, not only for the short term of losing a guy like Allegretti, who did have to step in the past multiple times over the past couple seasons and help this team go on to the success that they've had. You needed to revamp that talent pool. You needed to find that sixth offensive lineman or that utility interior offensive lineman to step in so you can continue to do that and you don't get into another, Tampa Bay Super Bowl situation where you just don't have the right kind of bodies available. So you needed to replace them for immediately. But then to Kent's point, they probably aren't going to be forking over the money to Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey while also paying or keeping Joe Thuney at the money he's making, especially at the rate that interior offensive linemen are getting paid nowadays because teams have money to throw around. There's only one position that's consistently getting guys to free agency that are at the top of their position. That's interior offensive line. So the market's rising. So yeah, these guys are going to get paid. They're going to have to make the decision. Do they want to pay any of them? Which one do they want to pay? And so with that coming up within the next year or two, yeah, it's a good idea to start bringing in more talent, start bringing in other guys that will be part of the future there because, yeah, they've had success finding interior offensive linemen since Andy Reid's been here. They don't have to invest highly in it. They did with Joe Thuney. Don't get me wrong. It's not like Creed Humphrey was a late round pick, but they don't have to go out there and spend round one picks. They don't have to go out there and pay constantly guys in free agency top of the money. They find guys to come in like the Allegrettis. Osimile, before he blew out both of his knees, was playing very good for them as a guy they just brought in. Like, they've been able to find interior offensive linemen that have been good to acceptable for them. So I think they are trying to go that same route while they still have these starting three in there. But it's a good move. It's a good move for the future while still maintaining that Garozzo's level starting group for at least this three-piece Super Bowl run.
And I really like that they targeted the kind of market inefficiency this year. This was a really good interior offensive line class. This was a good offensive line class in general. Like, it just was. The tackle class was exceptional. The interior offensive line class was really good. You can afford to wait. I know that, everybody's going to bring up the Trey Smith thing. Oh, you can catch a day 3 guy. Trey Smith should have been a day 2 guy very comfortably. But because of the medicals, he wasn't there. This is a little bit different. Hunter Norzad needs a little bit of time. He needs a little bit of acclimation to the NFL before they feel comfortable trotting him out there. CJ Hansen even more so, but that natural movement ability, the football IQ that both of them display on a regular basis, that's stuff that Andy Heck is just going to sit down and say, hey, listen, kid, you may see a couple snaps this year, but by and large, we're going to roll with the guys that we have in front of you. So use this year to learn everything that you can from them. Be a sponge, because one of you, we want to take over this job next year. One of you, we want to be the right guard of the future, the left guard of the future. God forbid, the center of the future. They're going to pay Creed. But having those bites at the apple just helps ensure that you are continually taking care of your most important asset by investing in the interior offensive line. I love that they've continued to do this. I love that they did it again this year in day 3. I'm really excited to see those guys.
All right, let's talk about the linebacker position on the Italian food scale. I'm going to go with the Cascones for this group. So I think, looking last year, there's a little bit more depth to this because we were talking about Drew Tranquill as like a potential depth piece. They had 4 linebackers when you add, Drew Tranquill, Nick Bolton, Leo Chanel, and Willie Gay. You're excited about what you saw out of Leo Chanel as he was closing out the season last year. And I like this group. I'm excited about this group. I like the cost controlledness of this group for 2024. I do think this is a solid above average group in the NFL. I know some people are going to want to have this in the Grozo's territory, and I'm not going to fight you too hard. I just don't see a blue chip in this group that is just like a truly a true blue chip player. And that's why I'm just like, you've got a ton of really solid football players in this group, and that's exciting, and that's a lot of fun. This group plays off each other so extremely well. They play well together on the field. It is a great group, but it's not an overly dynamic group. It's pretty good though, right? And so I like what you have. I like how it fits in this defense. I like the players that they have, but I'm not in love with the group as like a Garozos for me.
This is a tough one for me because I'm with you. It's a fun group. I like a lot of the pieces. I like a lot of the players. It works pretty well in practice, but they have kind of a glaring need or like weak spot, and it's the one spot for a linebacker that I think matters, and that's like none of them are that good in coverage. Drew Tranquill flashes some ability in coverage. I think he's comfortable doing it, but Drew Tranquill isn't great in coverage. It's odd for a guy that used to be a safety. Just he gets a little lost in man coverage sometimes. He's better in zone than he has been. They're not great in coverage. They don't have any great linebackers in coverage. They don't have anyone that shows elite range in coverage all the time. It's just, and that's where I think linebackers as a whole separate themselves at the NFL level. That's when we start picking around and picking out the few linebackers that separate themselves from others. It starts with their ability to, like, high IQ, their ability to diagnose everything that's going on, to always play fast. I think the Chiefs are close there. They almost get to that benchmark there, but then we're missing that coverage linebacker. I think you're missing that piece in the coverage game that makes teams go, oh, maybe we can't just freely throw the ball over the middle of the field. Maybe we can't just stretch this team horizontally on the second level and make things work. So for that reason, like, I couldn't even consider a Garozos. I'm going to hang on to the bottom rung of a Cascones for this group because I do think they play well. I do think Tranquill and Leo Chenal's like improvement over the past couple seasons, the past couple years is worth noting. But man, like, I just think they're missing that. Obviously, Nick Bolton, like the leader of the best player there, the leader of the group, obviously matters. It's just when I'm looking for where to slot them, I think they just slip into a Cascones because they do enough things well, but I do think they kind of have that one big glaring weakness that made me consider Olive Garden kind of long and hard.
I will say this to that point. There's maybe like 5 coverage linebackers that we would, in the entire NFL, that we would be like, oh, okay, we feel comfortable with coverage linebacker. So, like, it is a little bit of a sliding scale.
Well, and weirdly enough, those are probably the groups that are going to get a Garozos out of this.
Yeah, probably.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's who it is. I mean, again, we think of those types of players and being like, oh, wow, what a game changer they are in coverage. And those are the ones that stick out. I still almost want to give this a Garozos, though, because on the whole, it's probably a top 6-7 unit linebacker unit in the NFL, and that doesn't include any of the depth. You know, Cam Jones, Cole Christensen, Jack Cochran, they're fine. Yeah, they're special teamers. That's who you want. I really like the Curtis Jacobs swing. I'm very curious to see him in camp as well. He might take one of those backup spots away, but it's just those 3 realistically here. You can't count on anything from one of those other players. And so from that, you've got your run plugger in Leo Chenal that you're going to be able to rely on a little bit more. Drew Tranquill, who is going to be more of your rangy will linebacker type that's going to be playing in sub packages right next to Nick Bolton, who is your defensive coordinator on the field and one of the most important players for this entire defense. So those are the guys that are going to be rotating in. Those are the guys that are going to be playing the majority of the snaps. When it's time for Nick Bolton to come off the field for the third drive this year, we're going to get to see a little bit of Leo Chenal and Drew Tranquill together. And I'm very excited about that linebacking group because I like the combination of range and physicality that those two are going to bring to the equation. And Nick Bolton's going to come back on the field. They're going to transform their defense like they did last year, and it's going to be great. So I get how it works, and I really want to put it in that upper tier, but I'm going to go just below that. I'm going to go a high-end Cascones here. Nick Bolton is going to get paid like one of the top linebackers in the league by somebody, probably Kansas City, but by somebody. And I think he's going to live up to it. Like the things that he does before the snap, the things that he does to adjust during the snap, the things that he does mid-game to help transform this defense matter in such a measurable way. He's everybody's favorite guy to pick on that defense because there are times where it looks like, that's a really bad play for that guy, but he more than makes up for it there. He's going to get paid like one of the elite linebackers in this league, even though he doesn't have great coverage chops, because it is so rare to have guys like him that have his skill set. So he alone makes me want to kind of push it up into that upper tier, but I'm going to settle on the high-end second tier of Cascones.
I think one thing that's interesting is that we get these two groups, and we've both talked about one of these, both position groups having someone get extended potentially this year, or getting a big deal here at some point in Kansas City. Like, just that's going to be interesting because we are talking about two of the less premium positions in the sport. And here we are talking about maybe paying an interior offensive lineman and a linebacker. Not that there's anything wrong with having that conversation. It's just, boy, there's some tough decisions coming down the pike for this
They're
team.
going to do it.
I think so. I think you're right. No, I think you're right on both. Like, I think it's going to be both. Like, I think it's both positions. It's just crazy that, it's crazy that we are talking about these kind of non-premium positions and handing over significant market-ish setting potential at interior, and we'll see what happens at the linebacker spot where Bolton's. I don't think Bolton will get $20 million like Roquan did.
I think he's going to get top 5 money.
Yeah, I mean,
that put him at Patrick Queen at 14. I do.
We'll see how this year goes, right? Like, you'll see how this year goes. But I don't think he's going to get Roquan money, but I think he's going to get pretty close. He might be the next in line behind Roquan, especially if the Chiefs continue to have the success that they have and the defense keeps playing well, because he is very clearly a huge part of that and helps them go. I wanted to go back a little bit, just like where we were rating them, because I think it is going to be a little bit of a unpopular take for Kent and I to have them more of a Cascones, especially like lower end, like not as high as Craig had them. But
I was like mid-level Cascones, you were low-level Cascones, and Craig was high. We all wound up Cascones. We're all in the same building.
I think we're right.
One's on the patio. That's all.
Craig is very close. Said he was close to giving them a Barrosos. I said I was close to Olive Gardening them. So there's still a little bit of a gap there. And I think for me, the thing is, when I watch this defense struggles, one thing happens: teams attack the linebackers.
Correct.
So I automatically I can't say if that is where teams are trying to attack. If a team sees this defense, they're like, hey, the linebackers are where we must attack, where we need to attack, and have a lot of success doing so. Like, that already right there is perking my ears up a little bit. And this also goes into the Nick Bolton contract discussion a little bit as well. He's kind of the guy that gets that target when teams attack the linebackers. And it's just because he's not a great in coverage. He doesn't always have the most range and stuff. This isn't trying to beat down the Nick Bolton as a player. He's fantastic when he gets to play between the tackles, when he gets to trigger downhill and go quickly and not just have to move laterally and show off range. He's exceptional, and the Chiefs do a great job of protecting him and allowing him to work in that way. Some teams have found a way to attack him and isolate him and make him be the guy that plays in space and makes these plays, and he struggles to do so. And as such, the entire linebacking group struggles to do so. And we didn't talk about it yet. This team did lose Willie Gay. And while I thought he was clearly their third best linebacker last year, he played the second most snaps by far. He was a starter. They trusted him out there over Drew Tranquil more last year. And if you want to say one guy has the most range, is the most dynamic, and flashes the most playmaking ability at the linebacker position, it was Willie Gay, and now that guy is gone. So, they did lose something from this unit as well, and they kind of lost the one thing that I don't think they have much of. So I think there is a little bit of, I want to see what this plays out like. I want to see what it is. Where are the steps forward coming in terms of being rangy, in terms of showing this dynamic ability and coverage? It's just, that's where my hesitation comes in, and why I can't quite get as high as I think Craig is, or maybe even where Kent is, because teams like to attack the unit itself.
Couple of things. I do think that the Chiefs have done a pretty good job of protecting those backers for the most part.
Especially after drive 3 last year.
Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job of that. But I do think there is one thing interesting to bring up there, Maddie, is, it's hard to replicate a defense year over year. And if you just remove Willie Gay's dynamic plays that he made and replace it with, steady, consistent assignment, sound linebacker play, like you might be losing something. Like, right, like you're not getting the lows of the Willie Gay experience, but you're also not getting the highs of the Willie Gay experience. And that is definitely something, like just eliminating the lows and highs of Willie Gay's, existence last year in Kansas City. That might, that might be detrimental. Like, that's, to your point, like that could be detrimental. I do think it's interesting that despite we say all this about Drew Tranquill and Willie Gay and who played more and blah, 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 they paid Drew Tranquill. They didn't pay Willie Gay. So,
and no one did, really.
That's the other thing. Yes, you lose Willie's dynamic nature. And like we talked about last year, like there's going to be 2 games a year where Willie Gay just took it over. Like, there it was. This was the Willie game, and he makes play after play, and everything is locked in. I think you get more consistency with this group by playing Drew Tranquill more, by playing Leo Chanel a little bit more. I think you get guys that are going to be in the right spot, which then translates to, oh, that guy has his gap covered. I know what I need to do. Nick Bolton maybe has tried to do a little more to make sure that he's covering a gap that maybe the other guy isn't always in. It's stuff like that I'm very curious to see how it plays out, because in theory, again, lost that range mattered. It absolutely mattered. But having 3 guys that are playing in tandem, playing like this triangle, playing and covering all the gaps responsibly, now all of a sudden it looks a lot different. Now you don't see some of the issues that maybe we did early on in games last year where the linebackers were targeted and they were put in a blender, and you were seeing some of that stuff. There's maybe a little more trust between those 3 guys that they're always going to be in the right spot. So maybe I'm hedging a little bit that those 3 are going to be better as a unit, as a whole, even though they've lost some of the dynamic nature that they had last year.
Well, that is going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening, supporting us even on a night where there's a lot going on with everybody. So we appreciate you. We love you. We'll catch you later.